Good afternoon, everybody. Our group discussed the marine ecosystems. I could start by a very easy joke. I won't, but I could. Saying, for example, that I'm happy to be the last reporter, as we had to tackle the most pressing and the most important issue of all 5 groups. But it wouldn't make justice to the level of sophistication of our speakers, our facilitator, and our group participants, whom I want to thank on this occasion. So I won't make this joke. However, you have to admit that we had the mission to find solutions to protect, save, manage in a sustainable way about 2/3 of the planet, to tackle the livelihood issues of about half of the population, of the world population, which lives nearby the oceans. I mean, in the 5 to 10% of the land that is considered coastal. So indeed, it was an important discussion. We were, contrary to many of the stakeholders who have an economic activity in the sea, we were very law-abiding or rule-abiding in our group. So we decided to go and to try to fill in the various categories we had been offered to fill in. The state of play, first of all. I won't give too many details about this because we know we're not here to describe the issues. But just as a reminder, the main issues we considered were really the most important, were first of a chemistry nature, I would say, ocean temperature, ocean acidity, which is increasing with climate change, and the question of primary productivity, which is decreasing over time, are really big issues that if we don't handle, will prevent us from any kind of sustainable management of the oceans. Then fishing, obviously. And fishing, when we talk about fishing, we talk about unsustainable practices, destructive practices. We talk about illegal, unreported, unregulated activities. And of course, we talk about overexploitation of the stocks. Pollution is another of the main issues. The sea, the ocean at large, is still used as a dump site in many parts of the world, which definitely questions the relation we have to this ocean. And then we only touched upon this issue, but I think it will be an emerging one in the next, a growing one in the next decades, because it has emerged already for quite a long time. But oil and gas exploitation and their impacts on the ocean ecosystem will definitely rise as a key issue. We also mentioned a number of barriers to sustainable management, including awareness, education, fragmented governance, the lack of knowledge, which we have talked about already in the previous days, the lack of enforcement and the difficulty to have good compliance system given the vastness of the oceans and the lack of inhabitants, basically, in the ocean. There are also many opportunities that we have to build on. Many people live nearby the ocean, and actually they see it, they live with it, they live from it sometimes, so we can definitely do something with this. Constituencies exist and they're getting stronger every day. We have great multilateral environmental agreements about the oceans. We have the Nagoya commitments, which are very important, and we have many technical solutions. For example, water treatment plants. We know how to do that. We just have to do it more and to invest in it. We also have many technical instruments to manage fisheries in a more sustainable way. So we actually didn't have much trouble finding success stories. Success stories are everywhere. In fisheries management, for example, it ranges from community-based management, self-managed local fisheries, in developing countries, for example, to complex, market-based, sophisticated industrial fisheries management. We also have many success stories with land-based pollution. If we take the example of Europe, land-based pollution has dramatically decreased over the last 2 decades. We had the example of the sustainable education and skills centers in South Africa. We had many examples of MPAs that are actually working for the sustainable management of marine biodiversity within and outside MPAs. But clearly, all the success stories remain isolated. There are islands of innovations in an ocean of routine and unsustainable practices. So the key issue clearly is upscaling. How do we transform the ordinary instead of multiplying the exceptions? We went very quickly over these issues, but because I think we have the answers, basically. We know what we should do, but we still have to do it. Upscaling needs to be planned. Crossing fingers and waiting for upscaling to happen is not a good strategy. It doesn't work. We need funding for replication of successful practices. We need to address sector-wide transformations. We need to address governance systems at large, beyond the purely coastal and marine management that we want to implement. And we need learning, because pilot experiments have value only when they allow us to learn from them. In themselves, pilot experiments, local experiments in specific sites are not what is going to transform the ordinary management of ocean and coasts. So we need to be able to learn from this experience. And for that, of course, we need education and communication. Accountability and incentives. That brings us to the key conclusion of our group. We have to create the appropriate financial flow to fund what it costs and what it will cost in the future to manage the oceans. And we are talking here about both private and public funding. We need to educate the population, and by that we understand that we need to educate the population at large on their dependence on the oceans, but also we need to develop appropriate competencies among coastal managers. And we need to allow some fishermen, through education, to get involved in other economic activities than fisheries. Of course, we still need fishermen, but maybe in some parts of the world we need fewer fishermen, or at least less fishing capacity. Then we need to set up management systems that prevent free access. We need smart and context-specific combination of self-management, market, and command and control mechanisms. We need to develop ownership and stewardships at all scales, and we need to reform the fishing industry, clearly, playing on demand, on practices, and on incentives. And all this, if it has any kind of meaning in the long term, it can be only with a stabilized ocean chemistry. If we don't stabilize, especially the ocean pH, its acidity, all we can try to do on other parts of the problem will be very marginal. Coming back to the commitments, I think we struggled a bit to have commitments. We had one very significant commitment from Sir David King, who promised he would put emphasis on the oceans in his final report. So we will monitor this one very closely. And apart from that, I think, given the nature of the participants we had in the group, what we could commit was to make an extra effort on education and communication, to adapt our recommendation, the systems we promote, to adapt them to the context, because context is everything. So let's not say that this kind of marine protected area is better than this other kind in general. Let's not say that market-based instruments are the ultimate silver bullet compared to command and control. It depends on the context, so we have to analyze the context better and to design suitable solutions. And then the third commitment, which doesn't sound like a commitment, but we wanted to put emphasis on it anyway, we phrase it as free access, because we think free access is definitely an issue. So we have, as group members, to fight against free access in many different ways. Sometimes it's through privatization. It can be also through other ways of governing the commons. But anyway, what we have to avoid is free access to ocean resources. So these are the 3 commitments I want to close on. Thank you very much.